Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. A tweet calling out Dillian Whyte and goading him by David Higgins has been deleted by Higgins himself. So this tweet, and see here on screen because I got in before it was deleted, screenshotted it. He says, Dillian Whyte, besides your padded Saudi experiment, have you left UK? At Joe Boxer Parker will fight you anywhere, anytime. You got lucky with headbutt concussion. You know it. Dare you come to New Zealand and we will quarantine you, then KO you. The dollars can be 50-50. We back ourselves. So I'm going to unpack that because there's a lot to talk about with those sorts of statements. And bear in mind here, and you can come to your own conclusions about this. This tweet was posted sort of late-ish on Saturday night, New Zealand time. So we can only speculate what Higgins was up to and doing ahead of having the courage to put this tweet up. Not only that, he was getting into it with fans that were commenting and lambasting him for his comments. So one of them here, in response to someone saying Dillian Whyte is not the best person for you to call out, Higgins says, I'm shaking in my boots. And while he's deleted this tweet here, he didn't actually delete his responses. And you can see here on screen, here are 3 others. You are correct. Dillian Whyte would never take 50-50 because he is a... He knows he lost and he got lucky. So you're bang on, my son, for the first time in your life. Second one. I disagree, mate. Why would you not promote excellence, whether it be reading, writing, or fighting? And the third one, because the Parker team back themselves, lad, and don't really rely on contract clauses to prevail. Boy, I think the likes of AJ has relied on dodgy rematch clauses and corrupt officials, not like us or the Furies. Hashtag we sleep straight at night. And that one was in response to someone asking a question, why didn't Parker have a rematch clause against Joshua? And the answer being, he couldn't negotiate one against Joshua, who held the 3 belts, was the money man, and effectively no rematch clause for Parker. Regardless, though, of the circumstances of the contract or the fight, Joseph Parker didn't win it, and obviously he didn't beat Dillian Whyte. And David Higgins has been very vocal about Dillian Whyte and the situation regarding the head clash, which was an accidental head clash, but it was ruled a knockdown. So what was looking like a Joseph Parker round until that point became a 10-8 round to Dillian Whyte. Ultimately, with Whyte being dropped in the final round, the scores became closer, but Dillian Whyte was still able to edge it out and get the decision. And Higgins and Parker, they've been calling for a rematch since. And I've been very vocal. I don't think the rematch is happening anytime soon, because what incentive at the moment is there for Dillian Whyte to take that fight? While he's winning, he can kind of effectively, because he's in the pay-per-view business, select his own opponents, make good money in the UK, and he doesn't really have to take too bigger risks while he waits for a title shot against someone like Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua at some point. Bear in mind, he's the WBC interim champion, also the WBC mandatory challenger. That's for February 2021. So he's going to get his shot at the WBC title at some point. And obviously his next opponent is Alexander Povetkin. That is a fight where there's some risk, but obviously Povetkin, over 40 now, sort of not the force he once was, still a good competitive fight, but Whyte should win that one. Well, that's the way most people see it, including myself. And also in this little tirade that he was doing on Saturday night in New Zealand, he responded directly to Dillian Whyte. So this is, and you can see here on screen, this was from April 16, where Joseph Parker was actually responding to a Sky Sports story saying, Dillian Whyte, why are you so angry, etc. Dillian Whyte responded, and bear in mind this is about 10 days ago. Higgins, while he was on his run on Saturday night in New Zealand, says, have you, as you would so eloquently put it, by chance heard of the term Pidgin English, and do you know what it means? Ironically and hilariously, someone comes in and says that Higgins spelt it wrong and gives him the correct spelling of pigeon. So not the bird, but Pidgin English, that spelling. But David Higgins, clearly on a tear, but must have felt some measure of regret or something, deleting the original tweet, which we'll come back to, but not deleting his replies to people who'd replied to him, which, you know, he could have gone in and done, but maybe he didn't know how to do that. So perhaps a little bit of a facepalm here, but clearly pulling the tweet down, and we have to ask the question, why? What were the circumstances leading up to him posting that? I'll leave it to you to sort of speculate, but going back to the beginning, this original tweet, Dillian Whyte, besides your padded Saudi experiment, have you left UK? Well, actually, yes, he has. 2017, he fought Malcolm Tan. That was on the Terence Crawford and Julius Ndongo undercard. That was the undisputed fight. That was in Nebraska. Malcolm Tan was his first fight for 2017, a tune-up. A couple of months later, he fought Robert Helenius. That was also at short notice. But while there might have been, you know, like 24 fans in the arena at the point that Whyte fought, because it was on the untelevised portion of the card, he still fought in America. So he says, again, Joseph Parker will fight you anywhere, anytime. You got lucky with the headbutt concussion. You know it. Dare you to come to New Zealand and we will quarantine you, then KO you. Okay, there's two parts there I'll just sort of get into. So you got lucky with the headbutt and concussion. Yeah, he did. But that's the thing. It's boxing. Stuff happens. It didn't look like it was a deliberate headbutt. It was one of those things that happens. They came together. Joseph Parker came off second best. And he was unlucky in the sense he also got a knockdown ruled against him as well. So Whyte did have some luck in that fight. And Parker, you know, whatever happened in the rest of the fight, he tried obviously a few rounds. He looked a little bit groggy. But he came back and almost won the fight. But at the end of the day, it is boxing. And what is the incentive right now for Dillian Whyte to fight Joseph Parker? The rematch is always going to be there. Eddie Hearn knows this. Dillian Whyte knows this. This is why they're not in a rush to actually make it. It's like the first Derek Chisora fight. After that, there was calls to make the rematch immediately. But Dillian Whyte and Eddie Hearn decided not to do that. They went another route. They tried to work towards a title shot, etc. And eventually, after Derek Chisora beat Carlos Takam, there was enough energy for that rematch and money to be made that they pulled the trigger. So it was about timing and circumstance to get that second Chisora fight. What has Joseph Parker done since his loss to Dillian Whyte? Not a lot. 3 tune-ups, Alexander Flores, Alex Leopai, and then Shondale Winters. It's not the sort of material that gets you the rematch. And even though I think people are warming up to the potential rematch, it's not a fight people are absolutely baying for and are saying that has to happen next. But also this part, dare you to come to New Zealand? Look, you know, I'm from New Zealand and I wouldn't mind that fight in New Zealand, but I know that's not realistic at all. The money for the fight is going to be in the UK. And that just happens to be home territory for Dillian Whyte, but they go where the money is. And if you have that in New Zealand, you're probably leaving money on the table. That's just a fact. And this whole, we will quarantine you. I'm not sure why Higgins is really sort of saying that, because there is no fighting, no boxing allowed in New Zealand at the moment, no mass gathering, mass events. There's this whole presumption that because New Zealand's cases have been overall lower than other places in the world, that all of a sudden, you know, we're going to be opening up to the rest of the world. And I've been saying to people in comment sections and recent videos, there's a cautious approach that's been adopted in New Zealand, which has sort of helped lead to the outcomes of lower cases. Why would the government deviate and take a less cautious approach in the next couple of months? It's not going to happen. As it is, it might be towards the back end of the year at the very earliest before big events would happen. So I think it's very presumptuous for Higgins to say we will quarantine you, because at the moment they might just be fighting in a car park. It probably wouldn't get the okay to be a big event anytime soon. The dollars can be 50-50. Well, this is a classic David Higgins sort of tactic here. The only thing he didn't say in the statement, which he sort of says in different statements regarding fighters and these sorts of things, is open book. So he would say 50-50 open book and, you know, share the profits, etc. 50-50 right now, Joseph Parker is not in a position to ask for that. Sure, he might have been unlucky in that first fight with that accidental head clash, but at the end of the day, he lost the fight. It's boxing. It happens. And 50-50 for a guy that's had 3 tune-up fights in a row following that loss, I'm not sure how they think they can ask for 50-50. At the moment, it's probably more a 60-40 situation. And Dillian Whyte, I'm sure, being, in the Dillian Whyte pay-per-view business, would want it to be something like, 65-35 or even less, 70-30. He would say he's the A side. He's the one who would be hosting the pay-per-view in the United Kingdom. He's the one that's been winning. He's the WBC mandatory. He's the WBC interim champion. What is Joseph Parker bringing to the table right now that boosts his value in a rematch? At the moment, not much. He's a former world champion, but you can only play on that to a certain degree, as he did for the first fight. But he lost that one and has had tune-up since. I don't believe he's in a position for 50-50. Some people might say, actually, they're on the same level. But in terms of how their careers have panned out in the last 18 months or so, I don't think you can give 50-50. Just my view on that. And Higgins, yeah, sure, he backs himself and Parker, etc. But some of this talk, this bravado, yeah, I don't know if it's really based in reality. I mean, as I sort of said in my tweet, after this was posted, I said Higgins must be hallucinating to think it's going to happen in New Zealand and that Joe Parker isn't in a position to ask for 50-50. But you can't say that Higgins doesn't keep it interesting, because he does. He's a character, and who knows what he was up to in the hours before he posted that tweet, but he took it down. That in itself is revealing to some extent and maybe a little embarrassing, but maybe he needs to learn how to delete the other tweets that he posted in response to people who commented on his original tweet. But yeah, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.